Hey Colts fans, I'm JJ Stankevitz and welcome in to another episode of the Colts Show, an Indianapolis Colts podcast. We are presented by our friends at Microsoft Surface Copilot Plus PC. Really fun episode coming up today. I got Robert Mays, host of the Athletic Football Show, joining me here on the Colts Show. Robert is, like I told him in the intro, he's like my North Star in terms of football knowledge. The way that I like to think about the game lines up with the way that Robert likes to think about the game. He's how I stay up to date with 31 other teams in the league, while also learning a lot about the Colts, because he and his co-hosts on that show have talked a lot about the Colts over the last couple of weeks of the season, with good reason. The Colts are 3-1. We got that. We got the Colts Show Mailbag coming up after that. Remember, submit your questions at colts.com/mailbag. Drop them in the YouTube comments right here, or send them to me on social media on X or Instagram. This week, got a good question coming up about the Colts defense and getting pressure on opposing quarterbacks that I'll answer here on the podcast. Plenty more questions I'll get to at colts.com on Thursday for the web mailbag there. And then we're going to have a little preview for Week 5 and the Raiders game and the opportunity that's ahead of the Colts here, with 3 of their next 4 games coming at Lucas Oil Stadium, all against teams that currently do not have records over 500. All right, without further ado, let's get to my chat with Robert Mays from The Athletic right after these messages. The Colts' Week 5 game against the Las Vegas Raiders is our Kicking the Stigma game, and you can start your day with purpose as the Colts and AFSP Indiana have teamed up for a special coffee sleeve collab to raise awareness for mental health. Grab your coffee, join the conversation, and help us kick the stigma. Follow along on Instagram at Kicking the Stigma. For the first time ever, the Colts are bringing Fall Fests to Colts Nation. Enjoy a full day of family fun, corn mazes, hay rides, pumpkin patches, and more, plus Colts giveaways and appearances from Blue and the Colts cheerleaders. The next one will be on October 18th at Russell Farms in Noblesville. Get the details at colts.com/fallfest. Beer lovers, this one's for you. Join us for the Colts Beer Blitz on October 26th before the Colts take on the Tennessee Titans. Your ticket includes a pre-game tasting event at the Heirloom Event Center, plus your game ticket. It's the ultimate beer and football experience. Get all the details at colts.com/promos. Experience the game from the Moondrops Distillery Landing. Located behind Section 533, this exclusive spot includes premium access and a $10 drink credit. It's available at every home game. Get your spot now at colts.com/promos. It is my pleasure to be welcomed here on the Colts Show by Robert Mays. He is the host of the Athletic Football Show. It's my personal football North Star. It's the way I get all of my news. It's the way I've told Robert this several times. It's the way I sound smart when I talk to our people in our football ops department and our coaches and our players. So catch the Athletic Football Show in your podcast feeds. Go check it out after you're done listening to this. Robert, Derek Klassen, and Dave Hellman do a great job there. Robert, thanks for joining me here on this podcast.
Always happy to, man. Good to see you.
Yeah, you too. All right, so the Colts are 3-1. It feels like nationally, even here in Indianapolis, this is one of the biggest surprise teams of the first quarter of the season. What has maybe surprised you the most about this football team through 4 games?
I just look how comfortable and confident Daniel Jones looks. Even if you had some faith that the rest of the Colts offensive infrastructure was good enough to bring in and kind of insulate a quarterback who's had his struggles over the last 4 years, I didn't expect him to hit the ground and look like this. And that's not just about the results. It's about how quickly he's pulling the trigger on certain throws, how aggressive he's been. I mean, it just feels like even after splitting reps in training camp, which makes this even more impressive, the fact that he is so quickly acclimated to what they're asking him to do. Even if you had an optimistic view on how this could go, I don't think anybody could have imagined it working out this well this quickly.
When we've had examples of quarterbacks going from team to team, right? You know, obviously Darnold, Baker, Geno have been kind of the 3 big examples recently. The one I brought up on this podcast was Ryan Tannehill, actually, in relation to Daniel Jones when he got kind of cast aside by the Dolphins. Has there been maybe a common thread in those guys that have led them to success, and are you seeing that maybe with Daniel Jones with the Colts?
It's a great question. I've done a lot of thinking about this over the last really 2 years because we've had a bunch of examples over the last couple of years. So Ryan Tannehill was kind of on his own little island there for a little while, and now we have Sam Darnold, Geno Smith, Baker Mayfield, and Daniel Jones now becomes the latest example. If I had to guess, if I had to take a swing, I think that it's a combination of a lot of stuff, but in Daniel's position specifically, I think that a change of scenery is really nice for guys every once in a while. Guys that had the world on their shoulders because they were a top 10 pick, often with organizations that are floundering, right? If you're picked in the top 10 as a quarterback, you're not going to a place that has a lot of stability. And all of these guys, that was the case. We got two guys coming from the Jets. Baker was picked by the Browns, and then I'm forgetting the last one now, but all of these examples of these guys that mostly came from really dysfunctional situations. They were top 10 picks. They were young players. They had the world on their shoulders. They go to a new place. They turn over a new leaf. The pressure's kind of lifted a little bit. And I think the other element of this is, did you land with a play caller or a coach or a staff that kind of makes you feel a certain way about yourself? If you think about what Pete Carroll has been to Geno Smith and how much belief there was in Geno when he got to Seattle. If you think about what Dave Canales did with Baker Mayfield and everything we've heard about Dave Canales, Kevin O'Connell does such a great job of really consciously and intentionally providing his quarterbacks with a lot of confidence. That can be in the way the plays are structured, but it can also be in the way he just communicates with them. Like going into plays on the headset, you just think about the ways that he talks to his quarterbacks. And, Shane's got a real energy about him, and I can understand being in a room with Shane and Jim Bob Cooter and Tom Manning and all those guys and walking out of that room thinking, I can do anything, right? Like I can accomplish anything they ask of me based on the way that conversation just went. So I think there's some tangible football elements to this, but I also think there are some intangible emotional intelligence aspects to this that have kind of crept in as well.
You've talked about this in your podcast a little bit with like what's sustainable with Daniel Jones. And I heard, I think it might have been Dave Hellman on your podcast saying like, well, what he's doing under pressure maybe isn't sustainable. Like numbers wise, he's second in the NFL in completion percentage under pressure, and he is the second highest yards per attempt in the NFL under pressure. His pressure to sack rate is like 8%. It's like more than or less than half of what it was with the Giants. Why maybe are those numbers not, or why do you view those numbers maybe as not super sustainable throughout the season, or could they wind up actually being sustainable the way that he's playing?
I think they can improve based on where they used to be. I think being up near the top of the league, that's just a little bit less likely. Now, if you look back at when we say stuff like that, that's not really even as much about the player's history as it is just like the mathematical history of professional football. Yeah, it just history and just math will tell you it's difficult to keep playing at that level in those situations because those situations are inherently volatile. So when you look at the best quarterbacks in the league under pressure every single year, a lot of the time it'll bounce back and forth. Some guys will be bad one year and then they'll be okay the next year, and then they'll be great one year and then they'll be bad the next year. The exceptions to those are the aliens, right? Like Josh Allen is good under pressure every single year because Josh Allen is physically built like very few quarterbacks who have ever played the sport. Daniel Jones, while having the physical gifts of a top 10 pick, is not Josh Allen. So my assumption over the course of the season is even if he's going to be better under pressure than he was in his last couple of years with the Giants, he's not going to be as good under pressure as he has been over the first couple of games. There's so many things would point to telling you that's going to be the case. So now it becomes a question of, if he no longer is the best quarterback in the league under pressure, is he average? Is he slightly above average? And if that stuff holds at a certain level with all the other good qualities about the offense, can this continue to be one of the better offenses in the NFL? I think that is at the center of it all.
As you've studied this offense, I'm curious, like you mentioned Shane and the way that, he's maybe making Daniel feel about certain plays and his ability. Like, I feel like after the 2023 season, there's a lot of discourse about, Shane Steichen being a top 5, top 7, top 8 play caller in the NFL. And then that dissipated after last season with the way the Colts offense had to operate. Do you see, like, is this almost like a reminder that Shane Steichen is a really good play caller if he gets a quarterback who he feels confident can operate the offense, if that makes sense?
I mean, the way that you're framing this is if it's like a subtle nudge as a reminder. It's like a bullhorn reminder. I mean, it's like you're screaming it from the rooftops, like somebody's pounding you over the head with it. It's not merely a reminder. It's like a rude awakening to the idea that, yes, Shane is very good at this. And I think this offensive staff really deserves a lot of benefit of the doubt, considering what they've been able to do in 2 of the last 3 years when they've had at least a little bit of stability at quarterback. And I think a lot of that is Shane and just seeing how different the deployment of the offense looks with this group than it did in his best days with the Eagles, for example, right? I think he does such a great job of not fighting against the current when it comes to his offensive personnel. And so many coaches want to say this. They always say this. Every introductory press conference, it's always the same refrain where they say, well, we're going to build the offense through the players. And then few guys actually do. And Shane just does that. It's like, well, what do the guys do well? He has Tyler Warren. He has this fascinating like chess piece of a player. And he's like, well, what does this guy do well? And we can do some of the Dallas Goedert stuff, but you can also use him in all these different ways that you've never used anybody else. And, it seems like a simple idea as to how to be a football coach, but I think he's tapped into it as well as anybody else really has.
It's funny because at the top of this, I mentioned that your podcast is kind of my North Star for like talking to people about football. I literally brought up something you said about Shane Steichen, about how he doesn't ever feel the need to be the smartest man in the room. I brought it up in a podcast with Daniel Jones before the season, and Daniel's answer was like, there's a lot of genius in that simplicity, that you just take these ideas and say, what's going to work against this team with this personnel that we have? And you don't see, I think just the way that he's designing it for Daniel Jones is just very much, it's like Occam's razor, just take the simplest answer and go with it.
Yeah, and I think it helps when you have really good players on the outside. And coming into the season, that was one of the things I was really excited about with this Colts offense, is that I love the pass catchers. Like, I really do love the pass catchers. I'm like one of America's foremost Josh Downs supporters. I still, despite what happened last week and despite how uneven it's been over the past couple of years, I still remain intrigued by A.D. Mitchell's skill set. Michael Pittman is very good at what he does and what you ask him to do. Just hit on Tyler Warren. And then you have Alec Pierce, really, in my mind, leveling up, from what he has been over the last couple of years into what he's been this season, where he used to be really just a vertical threat down the field, jump ball guy, and he's kind of turning into more than that. And you combine that with, we also have like the best running back in the league, maybe not named Saquon Barkley, just to, if you guys forgot about that. So you have all of this talent. And again, I think Shane and that staff have done a really good job of how do we kind of get out of the way and create the right one-on-one matchups and situational deployments of these guys, because we have the talent here that can really carry us.
You guys on the Athletic Football Show have done a lot of work on the Colts already this year. And I'm curious, Robert, like when you've dove into the film on this Colts offense, has there been like one of those guys who you were excited about, intrigued about, who's just like popped off the film for you as you've watched this team?
I honestly think that the most surprising part, and it's not because I thought it was off the table or anything, but because it was kind of an unknown. We had seen them in small stretches, but now your established starters, the rest of the offense personnel-wise, the five pass catchers, the left tackle, the left guard, the right tackle, when those guys are locked in, we know what they are. The center and the right guard being full-time starters. Now, what was that ultimately going to look like? And we talk a lot about Shane, but I think what like Tony Sparano Jr. has done over the last couple of years with that group, where even if they've had some injuries, even if you've had guys rotating in and out, you've had a guy like Bernhard Raimann, who's a third-round pick that, while older, is very inexperienced and is kind of a raw prospect. Like, I always like looking at teams and seeing who's getting the most out of their offensive line personnel consistently. And the Colts have done that. The Colts have done that from the moment that this staff walked into the building. And so I don't think we should necessarily be surprised that Tanner Bortolini and Gonsalves have played as well as they have over the first 4 games and 3 in Matt's case. But I just think that them hitting the ground running and allowing this offensive line to remain a defined positive of this team is something that's absolutely been driving a lot of their success.
See, that's why our viewers and listeners should listen to the Athletic Football Show, because I think a lot of like national analysts would be like, well, it's Tyler Warren. He's been awesome. And you're like, no, it's the right guard and it's the center, because you've done your research and you also know that Tony Sparano Jr. is a very good offensive line coach. So that's a little pitch again for folks to go check out the Athletic Football Show after this. Defensively with this team, Lou Anarumo's done some really interesting things in terms of the pressures he's sent, the coverages he's played. Where do you see maybe the strength of this defense? And then where do you view areas this defense does need to get better as the season goes on?
I mean, I think it's pretty clear. The strengths, I think you have good players up front. Lou's going to do some creative stuff. You almost baited Matthew Stafford into an interception on a simulated pressure last week that Zaire Franklin almost got. Like, there are going to be 1 or 2 plays a game where he's going to try to pop a quarterback's brain and steal a takeaway here and there. And I think that's the right approach when you have a good, not great defense. The weaknesses in my mind probably the weaknesses anybody can identify at this point. It's the other outside corner spot and it's the other off-ball linebacker spot. And we have seen offenses, even not very good ones, be able to take advantage of those two things. Because Xavier Howard didn't play football last year, right? Like, and is from my seat, like I just sit here and watch this team and think, man, wouldn't it be great if Justin Wally hadn't gotten hurt in training camp? The Colts and the Colts fans are not allowed to do that, but that is what I keep coming back to, is that it feels like whether it's Mekhi Blackman, whether it's Xavier Howard, like whoever that other outside corner is, teams have been able to take advantage of that pretty consistently so far this year.
When you just zooming out on this team and on the season so far, so the Colts are 3-1. The Jaguars are 3-1 in the AFC South. You got the Texans at 1-3, Titans at 0-4. How do you compare? How do you think the Colts stack up to those three teams specifically? In terms of, folks here watching this, listening to this, haven't experienced a division title since 2014. And I think that's kind of where everyone's mind is going. It's like, hey, can this finally be the year? You having this kind of global perspective of it, where do you see the Colts stacking up right now within those teams in the division?
I mean, I think that would probably put them at the top right now. If I had to like power rank the teams in the AFC South, I think I've just been more consistently impressed with what the Colts offense and the Colts passing game have looked like over the first 4 weeks of the season. Jags defense has been really good, but when you're creating 3 turnovers a game, it goes a long way in making your defense look better as a unit. If they can sustain, if you told me right now that the Jags ended the season with, let's do the math on this, 71 created turnovers, I will pick the Jags to win the AFC South. If that falls back to earth a little bit, which I assume it will to no fault of their own, right now as it currently stands on September 30th, I think I feel the best about the Colts.
What is wrong with the Houston Texans?
Their offensive line is very bad. We knew that coming into the season. That has remained the case. You have bad personnel, and I think that you have an offensive staff that's trying to figure out how to plan around that bad personnel. And I can understand, there's some teams where you watch what they're doing and you think, why, right? Why is this the plan? I'd love for somebody to coherently explain to me why this is the way they want to approach offense. I think of like last year's Bears as an example of that, where you watch the struggles and I'm like, if you're bad, you're bad. But this is not the route to being good. And I watched the Texans over the last couple of weeks, and I understand why they're trying to do the things they're trying to do. Early in the season, we have a bad offensive line. Let's try to keep 6-7 guys in protection, push the ball downfield off play action, maybe keep our quarterback clean because we're adding extra bodies in pass protection. Well, they were getting leaky protection doing it that way, and then you're not having enough guys out on routes to provide him options, and so you're torpedoing yourself before you even get started. And so I feel like they're just trying to ideate and figure out the right way to work through their offensive line concerns. And this week, I actually do think they did some stuff that maybe points to them having some solutions. Everything that you're going to have to do with that offensive line is going to limit you in some way. But them spreading things out a little bit more, playing with more 3 receiver sets, trying to create a little bit more space in the run game, getting the ball out of CJ's hands quicker. Again, I think we'll realize the limitations of that over time, but I can get why you think that's the correct solution in the moment based on some of the things that you're having to work through as a staff.
I want to get your thoughts on the Raiders before we get you out of here. Obviously, the Colts' Week 5 opponent here. Geno Smith, a favorite of ball knowers over the last couple of years. He's had some weird games this year. Is that fair to say? I mean, like 2 games where he's thrown 3 picks or multiple interceptions, and then 2 games that he's been pretty good. What's your view of the Raiders right now heading into this game?
I think the Raiders are a team that's really struggled up front on offense over the first 3 weeks of the season. They were better up against Chicago last week. The Bears defense has really been struggling. The Geno thing is just kind of bizarre. It's been tough as somebody who has long said that he's an underrated quarterback to watch what's happened in 2 of those games. And, it's easy to say, well, I promise he used to play better than this and have people not believe you. But you look at the numbers and it's just very clear. Over the last, even when he led the league in interceptions or was in the top 3 last year, he was still below average in turnover worthy play rate when you look at stuff like Pro Football Focus. When you look at on target rate, from some of those advanced analytical sites, the Seahawks were always in the top 3 when Geno was there. He was a obnoxiously accurate quarterback. That was his biggest strength as a player. And so far this year, he's up near the top of the league in turnover worthy play rate. and he's below average in terms of some of the accuracy stuff. And that's just not what we've seen from Geno Smith since he became the starter in Seattle. And so those two starts that you mentioned are probably two of the worst games I've seen him play since he became a full-time starter again. And then you combine that with some of the offensive line concerns that they're dealing with and just a lack of personnel on the defensive side of the ball. And I think you realize like where the limitations of this team are. If they were going to outperform expectations and be competitive, I think they needed Geno to play as well as he has over the last couple of years. And so far that just hasn't happened.
All right, I'll get you out of here on this. You guys, on your podcast on Sunday night on the Athletic Football Show, you, Derek Klassen, and Dave Hellman had a discussion about if the Colts deserved a seat at the table. You guys have done this. You have 10 seats at the table. These are Super Bowl contenders. And for some background for folks listening or watching this, you can be added to the seat at the table, but once you're removed, you're done. You can't be put back. You guys took the Texans off earlier in the season. And ultimately, there was one spot at the table, right? And you put the Tampa Bay Buccaneers there, which I think was totally legitimate based on their previous history. The Colts will get a seat at the table this season. Why?
Because the offense will be one of the best units in the league over the course of an extended period of time. I think that's why it will happen, is that we'll get past Halloween, and maybe they could go on there earlier than that. Listen, like if the Bucs have any more injuries and start sliding, it's close enough where I'm happy to put the Colts on there. But if we get a little bit more time on task and a little bit more proof that the offense is more than just one of those September mirages, which do exist in the NFL all the time, then I will absolutely feel comfortable putting them on there. Because when I watch this team right now, there's not that much about it that feels flimsy, and maybe we'll be proved wrong, but so far, like, there isn't anything about this where I'm like, that's fake. Like, again, we talk about some of the numbers that'll fall back to earth a little bit, but for the most part, I do believe in a lot of what I'm seeing.
I mean, as someone who is invested in this team, just even hearing you guys discuss the Colts at a getting a seat at the contender table before the calendar even turned to October has been awesome. It's been a really nice little thing that's been going on, and you guys have done a great job talking about the Colts on your podcast. Robert, you did a great job talking about the Colts here on this podcast. Sincerely appreciate your time coming on here, man.
Anytime. Talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, Robert. All right, back here on the Colts Show. It's time for the Colts Show Mailbag. Remember, submit your questions at colts.com/mailbag right here in the YouTube comments, or send them to me on X or Instagram. The Colts Show Mailbag is presented by Microsoft Surface Copilot Plus PC, achieving greatness with real-time AI insights from the field to the front office. Microsoft Surface Copilot Plus PCs are transforming how the Indianapolis Colts win. All right, our question comes from Lucas Puente from Henryville, Indiana. And Lucas asks, what are some ways the Colts are implementing on the defensive side of the ball, or what are some ideas the Colts are implementing on the defensive side of the ball to generate more pressure on opposing teams' quarterbacks? So the Colts' pressure on opposing quarterbacks has been uneven this year, right? Weeks 1 and 2, I mean, this is one of those things where the stats matches up with the film, right? The Colts were last in the NFL in pressure rate in weeks 1 and 2 per Pro Football Focus. They got after opposing quarterbacks just 20.8% of the time they generated pressure. But in weeks 3 and 4, the Colts are top 10 in pressure rate. They're 8th at 42.4%. League average this year is 37.1%. So the Colts have been not just top 10, they've been above average in terms of getting pressure on. That's Cam Ward and Matthew Stafford. I think a couple things go into this here. So, first of all, weeks 1 and 2, the Miami Dolphins and Denver Broncos, two teams that do not let you get after their quarterback. The Dolphins this year have the 5th lowest pressure rate allowed in the NFL. The Denver Broncos have the 2nd lowest pressure rate allowed in the NFL. The Titans and Rams, not in the top 5, not in the top 10. They're more below average-ish to way below average like the Titans are. And the Colts have really got after opposing quarterbacks in those last 2 games. That's been a really good sign. Another thing I'm going to note here. In week 2, Laiatu Latu didn't play. Let's not forget that when we think about that Broncos game where the Colts didn't sack Bo Nix, they did not have Laiatu Latu. So get this. A couple things I looked up on Latu. So he had 9 pressures in week 4. He was all over the Rams' backfield in that game. His 9 pressures were the 2nd most of any single player in week 4, behind only Micah Parsons. He was tied with Abdul Carter and Aiden Hutchinson. What do you know about what's the similarity between at least Carter and Hutchinson and Latu? They were all the first defensive player taken in their draft. Actually, Hutchinson wasn't. I just realized that. Wrong note here, Trayvon Walker went first to the Jaguars that year. Either way, all really highly picked players, right? Latu fitting in right there. Get this. So Latu has a 29.7% pass rush win rate. What does that mean? He's beating the guy in front of him about 30% of the time. This year, among defensive ends, the top 5 DNs in pressure rate, or in pass rush win rate this year. Number 5, the Rams' Jared Verse is very good, 27.9%. Number 2, Micah Parsons, obviously very good, 28.2%. The third, Will Anderson Jr. at 28.8%. You can see where this is going. Second, Latu, 29.7%. And then first is Myles Garrett at an absurd 35.4%. So Latu is right up there with guys who are considered among the best edge rushers in the NFL in terms of beating the guy in front of him. Here's why I think this is going to it's going to start resulting in the sacks coming in bunches for Latu. So last year, Latu's pass rush win rate, it was good. It wasn't great, but there were so many times where he would beat the guy in front of him and the ball would be like whizzing right by his ear to a receiver who was open 5 yards downfield. The Colts this year, because they're switching up the way that they're playing with Lou Anarumo being here, they're blitzing a lot more. The Colts this year have the 12th highest blitz rate in the NFL, 33.5%. They are 9th in 7+ man blitzes. So that's sending the house. 7 guys is sending the house. They have the 9th highest rate of those this year. They're 9th in EPA per play allowed on blitzes, and they're 5th in success rate allowed on blitzes. So the Colts are a good blitzing team. They're not actually generating as much pressure as you would think in those moments. The Colts are 25th in the NFL in pressure rate on blitzes. But it's like what Robert said, talking about Lou's defense, where he's like, Lou's going to break the brain of the opposing quarterback 1 or 2 times with a sim pressure, with a guy dropping, whatever it might be. So even if the Colts aren't getting pressure on those, they're getting positive plays on defense because of that. The point of this is, because of all these different pressures, I think the Colts are going to continue to create one-on-one opportunities for Latu, and then beyond that, create opportunities where the opposing quarterback has to, what am I seeing? Hitch, hold on a second, bam, there's 97 in his face. That, I think you're going to see more and more often because Latu is winning, and these numbers kind of match the film that opposing quarterbacks are having a somewhat hard time diagnosing what the Colts are doing defensively. So I think it's going to come. I don't think Lou needs to do anything like really different. I don't think there are any new ideas he needs to implement. He's kind of implemented every single new idea you possibly could in terms of sim pressures, 5-man pressures, 6-man pressures, 7-man pressures, whatever it might be. The other guy I want to point out here, DeForest Buckner is going to get his. Like, you turn on the tape. I know he doesn't have a sack this year. Turn on the tape. DeForest Buckner is playing awesome. He is going to also really start getting those sack numbers back up there to where they should be based on his level of play. He's getting double-teamed a decent amount, but I think as Latu continues to show he can't be a guy you can just leave on an island, maybe he gets chipped by a tight end or a running back, but there are a lot of offenses that will have their guard kind of keep his eyes, keep scanning, and kind of go hunt that D end. Well, if you're a guard and you're combo blocking DeForest Buckner and you got to get off him because Latu's screaming into the pocket, guess who's going to probably win that one-on-one matchup because he's strong, he's going to strain? It's going to be DeForest Buckner. So I think eventually this pass rush is going to turn into a really, really nasty unit. They still got to get some more games under their belt, but I think as the season goes on, you're going to see this pass rush really start to take off. The underlying numbers are there, the blitz numbers are there, and I think there's a lot of upside in that. Again, good question right there from Lucas Puente. Remember, you can submit your questions to the Colts Show Mailbag. You know by now at Colts.com/mailbag you get at Colts.com, and you can drop them in the YouTube comments here. Also get at me on social media. All right, let's talk about the Raiders. And before I get into kind of the nitty-gritty of this, like the opportunity ahead of the Colts right here is really significant. If you look at seasons in quarters, the Colts went 3-1 to start the season. They beat a good team in Denver, and they lost to a good team in the LA Rams. Now, these next 4 games, you've got 3 of them at home against the 1-3 Raiders, the 2-2 Cardinals, and the 0-4 Titans. This is an opportunity for the Colts to frankly, stay perfect at home. And then you go on the road in week 7 to the Chargers, who have had a very good start to the season. However, they just lost to the New York Giants in week 4. And they're already down Rashawn Slater, who got hurt before the season started. They're starting right tackle, really good player, all-pro, made a ton of money. And now they're down Joe Alt, who sprained his ankle against the Giants. Reports are he could miss multiple weeks. We'll see if he winds up coming back for week 7. But if the Chargers are down Alt and Slater, that is going to be a tall task. Again, I was just talking about the Colts pass rush, how I think they're really going to come through. That could be an opportunity for the Colts to control that game up front in the trenches. All right. Let's talk about the Raiders, though. The opportunity that's right ahead of the Colts here. Because, look, you can't come out of this stretch 3-1, 4-0 if you don't take care of business against the Raiders right now. So the Raiders are 1-3. I got Robert's, take on the Raiders, in our conversation there earlier in the podcast. But the thing I'm looking for in this game, number one, we talked about Geno. So let's talk about Ashton Jeanty. Top 10 pick, guy is obviously extremely talented. His first 3 games this season, 47 carries, 144 yards. That's 3.1 yards per attempt, only 1 touchdown. Against the Bears in week 4, Ashton Jeanty switched up his stance to that Grim Reaper stance he had out of the backfield at Boise State, if you remember that. Against the Bears, 21 carries, 138 yards, 6.6 yards per carry, 3 total touchdowns. That's the Ashton Jeanty that the Raiders thought they were drafting. The player who I think anyone who followed the draft was like, that's the kind of player this guy can be. Colts are going to have to be on it defensively against Ashton Jeanty. But this is a really interesting matchup when you get into some of the numbers here. So, Jeanty this year, second in the NFL with 22 missed tackles forced. That's behind only Bijan Robinson. Jonathan Taylor, for some context, has 20 missed tackles forced. The Colts' run defense this year has only missed 8 tackles, according to Pro Football Focus. That's the 3rd lowest total in the NFL. So, Colts have done a really good job getting opposing running backs on the ground. They have not missed the kind of tackles that can really cost you, that frankly cost this defense a lot last year against the run. Jeanty very good at creating those missed tackles. But Jeanty this year, he's averaging 0.2 yards before contact. That is the lowest in the NFL among running backs. So that basically means Jeanty is being, on average, contacted barely beyond the line of scrimmage. That's not good. This offensive line has not been opening up holes for Jeanty. However, the Colts are 28th in the NFL in rushing yards allowed before contact. Opposing running backs are being contacted at an average of 1.5 yards per carry. So the Colts have been good at getting those guys on the ground, but there have been a little bit too many of those rush lanes that have come open. Kyron Williams had a couple of those against the Colts in week 4. So a really interesting matchup where the Raiders' offensive line has not blocked a whole lot for Jeanty, but the Colts have had some issues with run fits and offensive lines creating those holes for opposing running backs. So it's almost like the Colts' strength is Jeanty's strength, and the Colts' run defense weakness is Jeanty's run defense, weakness, I should say, probably for no fault of his own. So, look, rallying, tackling are going to be key. Jeanty is a game wrecker type of a player who you've got to be accounted for every single time he is on the field, which is going to be a lot in this game. Brock Bowers, I think we all thought he would be the guy who, this offense is going to run through. He had 103 yards in week 1 against the Patriots to open the season. He only has 122 yards on 14 catches in the Raiders' previous 3 games. Good for 8.7 yards per reception. Sorry if you got him in fantasy. You're probably like, I know that. He hasn't been good for me lately. But look, Brock Bowers, he broke NFL records. He had 112 receptions, 1,194 yards last year. I would expect Brock Bowers to still be a really productive player this season. I think the same probably goes for Geno. I know his numbers haven't been good. He's had some of these bad games. I think you can expect Geno Smith to be still a very good quarterback. Somebody you definitely have to account for. We'll see about Colton Miller, the Raiders starting left tackle in this game. He sprained his ankle in week 4. Sounds like he might miss multiple weeks, which we would assume would mean he would miss week 5, but not sure as we're taping this yet. We're taping this before injury reports come out this week, so we'll see. Defensively, Vegas doesn't do anything maybe super well, but they don't do anything poorly. And they have Max Crosby, who is a awesome football player, an absolute game wrecker, a guy who you've got to be accounted for on every single time. every single time he's on the field, again, he's going to be on the field all the time. So we'll kind of see how that matchup plays out there. But potential opportunity for the Colts here to maybe get after the Raiders defense a little bit. They don't allow a ton of explosive plays, but they don't maybe do, again, they don't do anything that you look at just kind of scanning through some of the stuff and you say, man, that looks like a problem outside of having just an absolute alien at defensive end. So you got to account for that in Max Crosby. Again, this opportunity ahead for the Colts is a really, really important one. If we get on that plane to Pittsburgh in Week 9 and the Colts are sitting there at 6-2, maybe even 7-1, like I asked Robert, when do the Colts get a seat at the table? The Colts are going to be viewed as a legitimate contender if they take care of business in this stretch. That is what this is about here. And I think, too, you're looking at the Jaguars are right there in this division. Maybe they've had some turnover luck, whatever it might be, but you got to account for the Jags, and you do not want to get in a situation where you don't have a cushion going into those 2 December games against the Jaguars. If we're thinking way ahead here, you want to be up on the Jags going to Jacksonville on December 7th. You do not want to be chasing anything against that team into a place that you haven't won in a decade. So just something to think about here. Big opportunity, and it starts on Sunday against the Raiders. Get out to Lucas Oil Stadium for this game. Let's make this a home field advantage against Las Vegas. Colts fans have been awesome so far this season in these 2 games. It's good to be back home for weeks 5 and 6. Let's make it one heck of an advantage at Lucas Oil Stadium. That's going to do it for this episode of the Colts Show presented by Microsoft Surface Copilot plus PC. Remember, greatness in the NFL is built on preparation and quick decisions. That's why the Indianapolis Colts trust Microsoft Surface Copilot plus PCs, bringing real-time AI insights to the sideline so coaches and players can make smarter, faster decisions when it matters most. From the field to the front office, Microsoft Surface Copilot plus PC is transforming how the Indianapolis Colts win. Microsoft Surface Copilot plus PC, where every day is game day. We'll be back next week here on the Colts Show with a fresh episode dropping on Thursday, leading into our game against the Arizona Cardinals. For now, thanks for watching. Thank you for listening to us here on the Colts Show, presented by Microsoft Surface Copilot plus PC. Talk to you next week.